to Bucknuts Almost Live here on Sunday, August 12th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ himself. He is Matt Baxendell. I will talk to the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic, later in the show. But Bax, let's cut right to the chase, my friend. This roller coaster of a story involving Zach Smith, Courtney Smith, and Urban Meyer's job status continues to take massive turn after massive turn. The latest development was yesterday, of course, when author Jeff Snook reported on Facebook that Tom Herman, of all people, former Ohio State offensive coordinator, of course, now Texas head coach, was the one who tipped off Brett McMurphy regarding the issues with Zach Smith and his ex-wife. Bax, Herman refutes that, but he does admit his wife, Michelle Herman, paid Courtney Smith's legal fees last year. This is like a soap opera times a million. Just wow. What is your reaction to all of this, Bax?
Well, first things first, this has gotten so far away from whether or not Urban Meyer properly reported some allegations that is theoretically the reason that he's not currently coaching the team in camp. It's ridiculous. This is Jerry Springer bullcrap at this point. I think at this point it's pretty clear that this is a really bad divorce situation, but you know, I put this in the bucket last week. I said I'm not going to question Courtney Smith's motives or anything like that because we don't have any proof of any of that. Well, Courtney Smith's mom came out this week and said that she believes Zach Smith and that Courtney's on the wrong side on this whole thing. So if you're Urban Meyer and you have somebody whose mother isn't even backing her in a domestic violence claim and the police aren't willing to press charges, what the hell are you supposed to do except keep moving forward, believing the guy? You know, the cops and the girl's mom. Those are the two most important people in the situation that I would trust if I was Urban. So why in the I'm going to say it. Why the fuck is he on domestic leave? This is stupid. Urban Meyer should be back in his job, period. This is a bunch of crap, and I'm pissed off about it. And now we've got Jerry Springer running wild on Ohio State football. I'm out of my mind about this because it's ridiculous. Now, as for Texas's involvement, first of all, if the story is true that Tom Herman got this stuff over to McMurphy, and I believe Tom Herman himself didn't call it McMurphy, but let's face it, the head of the mob boss himself doesn't call somebody up to order something. He goes through intermediaries, right? So, you know, that's insane to me. But Tom Herman doing this because Ohio State took Garrett Wilson from him and took some recruits last cycle away from him. It's fairly petty, but it also is fairly believable because here's the thing. You and I have talked about this in the past numerous times. We haven't really made a lot of it before. I've casually mentioned it once or twice before. But Tom Herman, I feel like I obviously don't know him, but my experience with him and his wife, the one time I've spoken with them, is one of that he can't really tell his wife not to do something that maybe he probably shouldn't do from a professional point of view. And that's if Michelle Herman is close to Courtney Smith and was out to get Urban Meyer and was mad about the whole situation, and clearly she's close enough to lend her or give her $10,000, so they're close enough, right? Truth be told, this is a situation where I could see Tom Herman being talked into doing something really dumb by his wife. And you want to go into me on this one because you were drastically involved in this a couple of years ago after the Michigan game. Whenever I got a call from Michelle Herman, so you want to give the readers a little bit of background on what happened there because we've already discussed this in depth.
Let's go into that. Let's go into that little background. Tom Herman was very good to us at Bucknuts. He was one of our sources. We had his cell phone number. He had many of our cell phone numbers. He did not have Bax's cell phone number one time when he wanted to chew Bax out. And I got chewed out by Tom Herman before, but he also was a great source while he was at Ohio State. As we can see now, he's very friendly to certain media members that he feels are, on his side, I guess, or at least are not muckraking. So after the 2014, I didn't even realize you did this. I guess it was just on Twitter. I don't even think you wrote a story. In fact, I'm almost positive about that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it was hours after the game. I hadn't even written the bucket yet.
Right. It was just a Twitter post or a message board, probably both. And Bax, for everybody out there, this is a great story, by the way. So Bax posts something like, again, we're running our quarterback too much, and we get him hurt, and JT Barrett's hurt. We all think the season's over. I remember thinking that, like, great. Maybe we can beat Wisconsin, but Cardale in the playoffs. I'm not sure I want to see Cardale against Alabama. Boy, was I wrong, because I love JT Barrett, but if he never gets hurt, and we'll never know if this is true, this is just my opinion. If JT Barrett never gets hurt, Ohio State does not win the national championship.
I agree with you.
So anyway, I mean, again, short story long, as I'm guilty of doing all the time. So I get a call from Tom Herman and other staff members. We get a call from Tom Herman. He's all upset because of what Bax wrote, saying that the truth, that Ohio State runs its quarterbacks too much. I know Braxton got hurt on a passing play or whatever. Yeah, who cares? The fact of the matter is, like, J.T. Barrett, maybe that was a passing play, and he was then scrambling. Braxton got hurt by Vic Beasley. It was a passing play. So they took exception to Bax saying that they run the quarterback too much, and this is what happens. You get your quarterback killed. This is, again, this is back in 2014 where, like, this is 2 years in a row. The quarterback's gotten killed, and now the season's over. And we get angry calls from – actually, Tom was pretty cool. He just said he wanted to talk. He never mentioned, at least to me, maybe he did to somebody else, he never mentioned to me that Michelle wanted to chew you out. He mentioned to me he just wanted to talk to you. And I'm thinking this could actually be a good thing for Bax, make a positive out of the negative. Like, there was one time Shelly Meyer got real mad at me, and that I didn't even know her at the time. It was soon after she took over, or soon after Urban took over, and it was actually about a year into his tenure. And I turned a negative into a positive. I ended up interviewing Shelly, but she was originally mad at me for something. I can't remember specifically what, and I reached out to her. So we were thinking maybe this could be, even though he was mad at Bax, maybe Bax and Tom Herman can now have a relationship. So that's where it ended, is we're like, all right, now, Tom Herman's a source of ours. We'll give Tom Herman Bax's phone number, let Tom Herman and Bax talk. So we thought Tom Herman was going to call Bax, and they're going to have a cordial conversation. Mr. Baxendell, what really happened?
Yeah, I was really excited about this. And for the people on the message board who I mentioned this yesterday who were mad at Bucknuts for sharing my number, they have an open blank allowance from me anytime a coach wants to talk to me. I'm happy to do so. I'll back my opinions up no matter if it's sitting in person, on a phone, or Twitter. I don't really care.
Well, and I think you gave us your permission.
Yeah, you called me up all nervous, like, hey, Bax, Tom Herman wants to talk to you. I'm like, cool, put him on. I thought you had him on hold or something, right? And
right, yeah, I didn't know. So I know you're going to tell the story, but yeah, you did give your permission. Yeah. Coach Herman can call me, but Coach Herman didn't call you, but A. Herman called you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there. This is like 9 p.m. the night of the 2014 Michigan game, and the phone rings, and I go, oh, I don't know this number. Hello. Hi, is this Matt? Yes. Who is this? My name is Michelle Herman. Oh. So Tom Herman called you guys to get my number, and instead of him calling to yell at me, he let his wife call to yell at me, which I would have respected Tom Herman for calling me and engaging about something on a private level like that. I would have really actually respected that. That his wife calls and tells me that I wrote such shit, and the Twitter post was, I said, another season is ruined because we ran the quarterback too much. This is 2 straight years the kid's gotten hurt. By the way, it was the exact same number of carries that Braxton and JT had those 2 same years in a row, too. And this is something we've been critical over for 2 years. But by the way, I'd like to add, Bucknuts was really high on Tom Herman. All of us were high on Tom Herman because we felt like he had really strong game plans. The offense was so much better than what we saw under Jim Bowman, right? Like, all of us liked Tom Herman. We just thought he got too tight on the quarterback, which, hey, maybe in retrospect, after seeing it happen whenever he wasn't here, wasn't even necessarily fully his fault, right? But it was a criticism that I thought was extraordinarily fair. Well, Michelle Herman tells me that it's just trash that I would have written that. JT's a good kid, well, which I agreed with, and I had never said otherwise, and yelled at me and told me, and I remember this vividly. The thing I remember most vividly was her going, with all of the shit we've put up with in the 3 years we've been here, I remember thinking, holy crap, your husband has lost like 3 games as the offensive coordinator in 3 years, and you think that you're getting shit? Like, he's popular. I really don't look forward to the day when you have to be the first lady of a football program if this is too much pressure. I didn't tell her that, but that was the impression I got. And so she screams at me a little bit more, tells me I'm trash. I said, Mrs. Herman, I'm just criticizing his use of running the quarterback. It's a very fair criticism. She tells me, no, this is trash, and people like you are trash, and this is why it's so hard to be here. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, she hates Columbus. And then she hangs up on me all angry, right? And I thought that's where it ended. I texted you, and I said, well, that didn't go so well. I'm pretty sure Michelle's mad at me. She sounded like she'd been drinking, but oh, well. Well, I got a call back 5 minutes later from Michelle Herman, and she goes, hey, where you at? And I'm like, sitting here thinking, is Michelle Herman going to try to come confront me in person now? And she goes, I go, well, ma'am, I'm up in Lewis Center. she goes, wait, who the hell is this? I'm like, Matt Baxendell, the guy from Bucknuts you just called to yell at? And she goes, oh, well, you're a jerk, and then hangs up on me again. I'm like, texted you, Dave. I'm like, yep, she was definitely drunk. So the long and short of it is that Tom Herman got a hold of Bucknuts, so not him, but his wife could yell at me about a criticism of running the quarterback, at which point she pretty much angrily complained about the city of Columbus and told me that I was a piece of shit. And I texted her the next day, tried to smooth things over, because obviously you don't want Ohio State's offensive coordinator's wife pissed at Bucknuts in general. I was hoping she was a little embarrassed when she sobered up about it. And, well, long story short, you know, she was polite on the text messages. I lived in Houston in the past. Whenever he got the job, I congratulated her, told her there's various places in the eastern part of Houston that were great to live near their campus, and kind of sat on this because we didn't really want to bring a big deal of it. What happens if Tom Herman comes back to the head coach? Don't really want to be upset about anything with it. Well, in light of all of this, I think it's a pretty indicative of the characters of the people involved that these accusations for me and you particularly, knowing this situation, ring fairly true based on that experience. And I think at this point it's relevant because now we're talking about, you know, people who have an ulterior motive involving the Ohio State football program. And that's why this story is being told in full detail here for the first time. You know, I wasn't going to make a big deal of this. This happened in 2014. Now it's 2018, right? But it all seems kind of relevant now when you're talking about Michelle Herman's best friend being Courtney Smith and all the motivations that may have come into all this stuff. Maybe we've all wondered why Courtney Smith would make such a big deal of a lot of this stuff whenever she essentially is getting her ex-husband fired and losing a lot of child support and alimony that would have came from somebody with a great job and would have in perpetuity here until those kids are 18. Maybe having some ties to the Hermans and feeling like she has some backing from them allowed her to feel like she was in a position to move forward with it. I don't know. But that's the story of the time Tom Herman called Bucknuts to get my number so his wife could scream at me and tell me how horrible I was.
One of the all-time stories regarding Bucknuts, and now it's out there, Bucknutters. If you missed it, you can rewind it and play it again. There you know. It's now out there. Before I let you go, I know the dean is over here just scratching, at his claws. He's ready to get going here, talking some recruiting and the impact here. Before I let you go, I got to ask about this because Jeff Snook's reporting. I believe Snook. I know Snook. I don't know him that well, but I've been with, on road trips. When he's covering the semifinals of the playoffs and the national championship game against Oregon. Had a chance to talk with him, during both of those games before and after. I believe the guy. He's solid. He's not a muckraker. He's not a liar. Does he love Ohio State like both of you and I do? Yes, he loves Ohio State, but he would never, ever, ever put himself out there and lie and make shit up just to protect Ohio State. It can be both. You can love Ohio State and you can be a hell of a reporter who, has your scruples where they should be. And I think Jeff Snook does. And, we'll find out if I'm right or wrong on that. But I want to ask you this before I let you go. So, when it came out, Snook's first bombshell report the other day on Facebook was that Courtney Smith's mom corroborates everything that Lynn Bruce said. So obviously Lynn Bruce is Zach Smith's mom, the late Earl Bruce's daughter. She says that, Zach never ever hit Courtney, and this was all, Courtney making this up, and she was lying. And Zach, if he did put his hands on her, she admits he put his hands on her, but it was always in a self-defense, motion, or to get her out of the way because he needed to leave. And I'm sure, if you're in a heated argument, you're not going to get somebody out of the way in the most gentle situation as possible. You're going to, forcefully get them out of the way. But still, that falls short of, being a wife beater. My question, though, is Courtney Smith's mom, according to Jeff Snook, seemed to corroborate everything that Lynn Bruce was saying back. Then you had Brett McMurphy coming out yesterday, Saturday, kind of going back and forth with Snook almost, tit for tat on Facebook of all platforms. Saying, he released some text messages back from 2014 and 2016 that seems to corroborate the idea that Courtney Smith's mom, actually did believe that Zach was beating her daughter. I mean, what do you make of that? Those are two, extremely different reports there. I mean, what is to be made of that?
Well, what's to be made of it is it's from 2014 and 2016. I feel worst for Courtney Smith's mother of all the people involved in this situation at this point, even worse than I feel for Urban, who I feel like is just completely on the verge of being vindicated at this point. Courtney Smith's mom, why wouldn't you believe your own daughter? And something has happened since 2016 that led her to directly tell Brett McMurphy that, yeah, he touched her and put his hands on her in a defensive fashion. That she was on the radio in Columbus saying, I don't believe my daughter's allegations against Zach. Well, I certainly, and this needs to be clear, I certainly don't think Zach Smith is any sort of angel. There's nobody who's going to come out of this divorce looking good. All right, this is one of those things that it should have stayed sealed between the two of them. But let's be real blunt here. First of all, Jeff Snook. Unlike Brett McMurphy, Jeff Snook is not changing his stories. He even added to his story yesterday Michelle Herman's reaction to the Tom Herman story with the headline, Updated with Michelle Herman's Reaction. Brett McMurphy, on the other hand, changes arrest to investigated after Urban talked about an arrest at the media day, didn't say anything about it. Brett McMurphy accused Earl Bruce of trying to cover up domestic violence and then casually edited it out without a retraction in his story. Brett McMurphy keeps changing everything, and Brett McMurphy seems oddly in a situation where he keeps wanting to push this hard narrative of Urban Meyer's covering up for domestic violence and Zach Smith's a wife beater, when there's a lot of stories coming up that don't necessarily corroborate it. And, in fact, McMurphy's story came out essentially making Urban look in the worst form possible. And unlike a lot of these scandals where the trickle-out makes the initial story look like chump change, the trickle-out here makes Urban look better and better and better and better and better and better. It makes Zach Smith look less like a crazy wife beater and more like somebody who's in a shitty marriage. They're always trying to essentially, like, when both moms are saying he didn't hit her, but he picked her up and got her out of the way so he could get out of the house, I have to believe the mothers. If the Powell police aren't pressing charges despite all these different things, guess what? They have to legally press charges unless Courtney Smith can't say, I don't want to press charges. If they have evidence, they have to press charges. So what do you do if you're Urban Meyer when the source of the accusations to you has a lot of questions about her trustworthiness? What do you do when the police tell you there's nothing to it? And according to Urban, he passed it on to his superiors. If Gene Smith is the one who called Zach Smith off the road, then there's no way Urban didn't have things reported correctly. Plain and simple. But what the hell is Urban Meyer supposed to do? Right? You can only criticize Urban for keeping Zach Smith on staff if, in the years afterwards, if you worry that Urban Meyer might have been employing somebody who was a wife beater. But if the mothers are involved here saying that he didn't do it, and the police are saying he didn't do it, who's Urban? Freaking Columbo? So it's stupid to me that you would blame Urban for this. And I keep coming back to this because the crux of this, all this Jerry Springer crap is, it seems to me like Urban Meyer's on administrative leave for no goddamn reason whatsoever. And this is just all chaff around the fact that Ohio State's football coach is not in his job for something that has nothing to do with football or the university. And it's just insane. This is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever seen in sports. It's the word I would use for this is shit show. That's what this has become. And, you know, the truth is, McMurphy has not covered himself in glory with his reporting. Dave, you and I wrote the story about the Taylor Lewan assault story, right? That's really the only hard news I've ever written for Bucknuts. I do editorializing. I do columnizing. I do opinion thinking, right? Like, it's nothing that I do in terms of hard reporting like you do or a lot of these other guys do. But it's standard journalism that if you have something wrong, like the Earl Bruce part to me really got me with McMurphy. Whenever the Jeff Snook story came out and said, Earl Bruce, no way, shape, or form even talked to Courtney on that trip, McMurphy quietly edited it out. It didn't say anything else. It was a couple hours after that initial Snook story. He just edited out that Earl Bruce didn't talk to Courtney Smith, right? Well, what does that look like to you? It looks like that McMurphy called up Courtney and goes, wait, did Earl talk to you or not? She goes, actually, he wasn't there. Like, that's just what I'm assuming happened. Because then McMurphy quietly just eliminated Earl from that. He just accused a college football Hall of Fame coach and a guy in Earl Bruce who has done all kinds of great things for the community of trying to cover up domestic violence and then just casually acted like he didn't do it. So I don't trust McMurphy at this point. I never had an opinion on him one way or another before this. But at this point, it seems like his story is constantly changing. He's constantly trying to defend a narrative versus any facts that have been uncovered like a reporter, whereas Snook is like, hey, I talked to these people. This is the facts I have. I believe Snook, too. I have no reason not to believe Snook. And not because what he's saying is what I want to hear, but because McMurphy keeps changing his story. And people who aren't sure of their facts, or McMurphy may be in a spot where he really trusted his source, and now all this other stuff's coming out, and he didn't get the straight story. I don't know. But I trust Snook, because Snook's not changing his story. And he's saying when he has like an update, he's actually telling us there's an update. So, you know, these are the final things I'm going to say about this, I think. I think the first thing is None of this has anything to do with Urban Meyer's job status. If Urban reported this and the police and the mother said nothing happened, what the hell is Urban supposed to do? And that's the only reason, theoretically, he's on leave right now, is this. So this is crap. Urban should be reinstated immediately. This is insane. Second, if Tom Herman's out there trying to do all this stuff, then it's not a good look. It's not a good reflection on him. And, by the way, a lot of this stuff comes not that long on the heels of Garrett Wilson, a five-star kid from Texas, whose primary recruiter was Zach Smith, committing to Ohio State over Texas, and Herman is getting a lot of pressure down there to keep the best kids at home. So when all those dots get connected, it may have been one of these things where Herman got talked into doing something he probably shouldn't have done, just like Herman got talked into getting my number from Bucknuts and giving it to his wife so she could yell at me. Professionally, that's a stupid thing to do. And there's a lot of parallels between how I can see that happening. And knowing what I know from having been yelled at by a coach's wife, not by a coach, but a coach's wife. I mean, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that seem like a very easy line to draw a very simple parallel to? It just seems like it's very easy to go, yeah, I could easily see how that happens.
Great stuff, champ. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, later, man.
And now we bring in the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic. And, Bill, just the recruiting impact so far, I know we'll know more hopefully later this week about Urban Meyer's job status. And we'll get into your, what you're hearing about Urban Meyer's job status later in the show. But just from a recruiting impact, this can't be helping Ohio State right now, but how much is it hurting Ohio State right now?
Oh, really, Dave, the impact has been minimal. I mean, they have 21 commitments, 15 for the class of 2019 and 6 for the class of 2020, and they have still the same 21 commitments. Not a single guy has decommitted. And, I'll take that a step further. Not a single guy has been close to decommitting. So, that's certainly a huge positive. Now, obviously, they're anxious. Their families are anxious to see how this is all going to play out. But they're all sticking with the Buckeyes, and as long as Urban Meyer keeps his job, I really believe that all 21 of those commitments will ultimately sign with Ohio State.
What are you hearing about Urban Meyer's job status? Is it you hearing positive, negative? Just what can you share about that?
Well, as soon as this happened, I started contacting Ohio State recruits. I talked to prospects there, recruiting prospects that have committed to Ohio State, parents of the prospects that have committed to Ohio State. And, as things have gone on, I've continued to talk with different prospects, and the vibe is absolutely positive for Ohio State and Urban Meyer keeping his job. And that's not to say they're positive he's going to keep his job, but the vibe is a positive one in that they feel like Urban Meyer is going to stay the head coach of Ohio State. I think that, the more I talk to recruits, the more I talk to parents of recruits, commitments, et cetera, the more and more that they feel that Urban Meyer will be the Buckeyes head coach. And as additional information continues to come out, that feeling gets stronger. So, Buckeye Nation, I think, would be overwhelmingly happy and overwhelmingly for Urban Meyer continuing on. So that's definitely positive news for Ohio State.
And we could hear something as early as tomorrow, Monday. So listeners out there, maybe as early as tomorrow, Monday, we will hear something about Urban Meyer's job status. That is not a promise. That is just a heads up that it could happen. Before I let you go, Bill, kind of the crux of the show here when we had Bax on earlier was talking about, Michelle Herman and Tom Herman. And Michelle Herman once upon a time 4 years ago called 2 out backs. That was a little interesting anecdote we shared right there, a little story. But just your thoughts on, do you believe that Tom Herman was involved in tipping off Brett McMurphy? And just when you thought this soap opera couldn't get any crazier, it just did. Just your thoughts on the Tom Herman aspect of this.
Well, Dave, I really don't know. I don't think any of us know for sure who was involved, who tipped off who. I really don't know. I think the important thing is not necessarily who did any kind of tipping off, but is this accurate? Is this something that really is an offense that Urban Meyer could be released or fired for. And I think that's the important thing. And the bottom line is that everything that I hear, read, and see, it just doesn't add up that Urban Meyer would lose his job for this, providing that he did follow protocol, which, again, Urban Meyer says he followed protocol. Zach Smith said that he followed protocol. And the families that I've talked to, the recruits I've talked to that have been in contact with Ohio State, they all believe that Urban Meyer followed protocol and did really what he was supposed to do. And, that's the crux of it. If those things are true, and again, this is what I'm hearing, that they are true, if they are true, then Urban Meyer should continue on as the head coach of the Buckeyes. And, that's really how I feel right now. Again, maybe something comes out in the next few days that, is different from what I've heard so far. But based on what I've heard so far, Dave, I just think he'll continue as the Buckeyes head coach.
Great stuff, Dean. I appreciate it, bud.
All right. Sounds good, Dave.
Thanks to the Dean of Ohio State Football Recruiting, Bill Kurelic, and thanks to all the listeners out there. I hope you have a great Sunday.